Pathway families, and welcome back to Fridays Are for Families. We are here this week with another family discipleship interview, and we're so excited to have you joining us. In fact, we would invite you to not look at this as just something that you watch and then turn off, but to look at this as a start of a conversation. And so maybe watch this with somebody else or think about who you can follow up with after this interview, because we know that there's going to be a lot of good stuff because we're here with Pastor Jason. So welcome to Pastor Jason. Welcome, Ben. Good to be with you guys and good to be talking family discipleship. So Jason, tell us a little bit about your role here at Pathway, but also tell us about your family.
Sure, yeah. Well, first, thanks for including me and having me and be a part of this. My role at Pathway is I'm the worship pastor, and we moved here about 13 plus years ago. So we've been involved, with worship and all sorts of different things for the last 13 years. My kids have been involved. When we moved here, we had 5 kids, and now we have 8. We only have 6 at home, though, because 2 have moved away for college. We've experienced lots of different changes and growth over those last 13 years since being here at Pathway. And it's a joy to be here and joy to be a parent.
What's the age range of your kids to help people know where you're coming from as a parent?
Okay, so when we moved, it was 3rd grade to a baby. But now the current ages are Hallie is 21, Braden is 19, and they're both in Southern California at different schools. And then the twins are going to be 18 in December, and Jalen is 15, Mila is... she's 12.
Don't share this one to Mila.
Okay, yeah, don't play it for her. And then Winston is 9 and Opal is 6. So a senior in college to a 1st grader is the span.
It's quite a spectrum. Yeah. So I can imagine just discipleship in general has to look different, right? Because you're discipling, I have a 1st grader, she's my oldest. Yes. And so I can imagine that being your youngest all the way up into college. I can imagine that it looks very different. The conversations you can have with Hallie versus Opal are quite a bit different.
Yeah.
But I can also imagine that there are just some things that you do intentionally with each of your kids. And so that's kind of where our question wants to go is hey, what are some things that you do intentionally? Not necessarily things that you've fallen into, but you do this and you mean to do this. This is on purpose.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting that you say as far as the discipleship looks different with the kids, because you mentioned Hallie and her being an honors student. The things that she reads, I've never read before in my life. Wow. Yeah. So her intake of, and she's at a Christian university, so a lot of the education that she's getting has that foundation of biblical teaching and things like that. So there's a broad range of where her brain is going. And as you guys know, when you're in college, you start to think that you have figured out the world, and then a little bit later you figure out nothing. And she is smart enough, I think, to know that there's a lot out there, and she's understanding a lot, understanding enough to know that she knows very little. And but that brings up interesting conversations that we have in regard to her spiritual life and the things that are helping her feel that she's growing closer to God, and what it means for her to continue to, because she's been serving in the church for her whole life basically, and what it means to serve the Lord. But again, the things that the education that she's receiving has really forced me to step up my game in that way. Then you have on the other side of just being step up my game and keeping up with her, right? But then there's the other side going all the way down to our youngest, Opal. I feel like I have to read up just to catch up with her as well. And it's a different kind of different kind of discipleship in that, just trying to foster conversations with her, and then also being ready for the conversations that she starts. And I think that's something, I mentioned both of those girls, is something that's kind of not unique to them, but they both have that, inquisitive minds and asking lots of questions. I wouldn't say that all my kids are like that. And so with someone like Hallie or Opal and some of the others at certain times, there's the Deuteronomy 6 principle of just always being ready, to have those conversations.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big part of like being intentional, is finding those moments to be ready to have the discussions, and being willing to set aside what I'm doing and what I might think is essential in the moment to, have the conversations that really could be, at least forming for them in that moment that I might miss out on if I'm not available. But I have other kids who don't necessarily approach their spiritual life with lots of questions. And that puts me in a different position of prodding and prying and seeing where they are, and seeing the things that interest them, trying to discover the things that concern them. Because it's easy for some kids, and I say that, maybe it works in general, but some kids in my own house where you just kind of, and I might have been like this for a while. It's just like I learn in my class at school, and I went to a Christian school, and I learn in my Sunday school class, I learn from my youth pastor, and that's what it is. I don't really have any questions about it. I'm just being told what the Bible says and what it means, and go with that. And I was good with that. And I think some of my kids can be like that. I think a lot of kids can be like that. And it might take a conversation for them to realize, oh wait, I do have a question about that. That is interesting. I've never thought about it that way, or I have thought about it that way. I've just assumed that I don't have all the information, and I'm just gonna go with what I've been told. But so I think there's definitely, for me, being intentional about it is taking the time when they have questions, and then taking the time when I sense a conversation is possible. My kids, all of them have done soccer, and most of them have been on teams where we travel even for practice. And there's just times in the car where we might be listening to music. We might both be listening to something individually. They have their AirPods in or whatever. But there's plenty of times, and it's very important for me to maintain the discipline, really, of fostering some conversation on those drives, because it's usually, unless it's with the twins or if some are on the same team, it's usually me and one of my kids. And so those opportunities don't come up all that often, except for in those situations.
Yeah.
And so taking advantage of those times to, what'd you learn in your class this Sunday, or what'd you learn in school today, that might foster a conversation about spiritual things, or how what they're learning actually is a spiritual thing. It's just in a mode of public school.
Yeah.
And I'll say that, especially from Hallie and Braden on, I feel like I've always been the kind of parent and pastor that has told my kids, you will hear things in your public school that I might disagree with, and you will hear things in your public school that that you might feel uncomfortable with, but I actually agree with. You will hear things in Sunday school that I agree with, and you will hear things in Sunday school that I might not agree with. And I want to encourage you, like, I'm okay with your questions. I want to encourage you to ask those things, because we're both learning. I don't have all the answers, and I hope you can come to me with any of those questions. And so that's the type of atmosphere that I've tried to foster as a parent when it comes to trying to disciple my kids.
That's really good. I love the emphasis on question asking and just trying to get a feel for when a conversation is about to start or when your kids might be open to one. So Jason, when I asked you about doing this interview, do you remember what your response was the first time I asked?
It was probably like, I'm probably not the best candidate, or
correct. Like... I think actually you said, I don't do that now. And,
it's much more aggressive.
But I mean, Ben and I both have a lot of interaction with your kids. Both of us know that you disciple your kids. But you mentioned the passage of Deuteronomy 6. Like, how are there different ways to disciple, and why did you react that way initially to say, like, no, I'm not the best candidate, and we know that you do it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the typical picture, and we know families that do this. They have dedicated times of sitting down with the whole family, and to have a Bible study, and prayer requests, things like that. And like, we've definitely had times like that. I mean, I think COVID was a lot of things to a lot of people. Some really negative, some really positive. A positive for us was we had a lot of those times. And a big thing was like watching the church service together on a Sunday morning. But another thing was like the meal times. We were all there for every meal. And some people probably are listening to this right now and thinking like, oh, that sounds so miserable. That sounds like exhausting or whatever. It was that, at least that part specifically, was a joy, because those mealtime conversations inevitably would go to themes of, that we can talk about what's going on in the scriptures. And so there's that kind of that model that I think we all have out there of like, man, if we could just, if it's not every day, it's a couple days a week where we're sitting down with the family and going over the scriptures. And I've just found that that's very difficult. It's very difficult in my house. It's very different and difficult with different age groups of kids. It just doesn't look like the ideal discipleship. I'm kind of under the assumption, I believe that everyone is being discipled at all times by something and someone. And so I'm going to have an opportunity to disciple my kids no matter what I'm doing. I'm teaching them to follow me in some way. And the way that we do it in our house is much more, it's at the dinner table, and it's what happened at school today. And then if nothing meaningful is coming up, a lot of times we'll do this thing where it's just like, okay, we're gonna start with a story and just kind of keep going in the scriptures. Mm-hmm. So like, I mean, classic Adam and Eve. Okay, so what happens after Adam and Eve are created? Like, how many kids do they have? What happens to those kids? And some of my kids are just on top of it. So great job, Jenna. And they're just like, they got the answers flowing. And some of my other kids are just like, they've heard the stories.
Those are the ones that are
they're in youth ministry.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, I can't remember. And you think as a pastor, I think it's like, oh man, have I totally just failed my kids? They don't know this what seems so obvious. But I think it's definitely at our house, like the most consistent times are at the table, dinner table, which I'm very pro for. I mean, I think, the meal is very significant in a lot of ways. and sharing a meal and the things that happen at the meal. So that's how we get it out. But it's not like hey, it's Tuesday night, it's 6 o'clock. We're at the table, or we're in the living room, and I've got my guitar out and doing things. But it's much more informal. But again, it goes back to what I was saying earlier about me making the most of situations and taking advantage of those times.
Yeah, that's good. What fruit have you seen from it? Like, so there's a lot of intentionality, a lot of conversations. I mean, with Hallie, you've had a lot of time to hone this, as your kids are getting older, like you've had more and more time with it. I think of my dinner table, and I think of if I try to do that, my dinner table can sometimes just be chaos.
Yeah.
And so trying to enter into that, it's like, well, that one's not going to work for us right at the ages that they are right now. I've got a 1-year-old, and so
Absolutely.
that's not going to work very well for that. She's crying or whatever.
Yeah.
So I haven't necessarily maybe seen some of the fruit of like discipleship and intentionality like you have. And so just trying to think through like what benefits or what fruit have you seen come from those conversations and times together?
I think before I answer that, you mentioned about being at the table and your kids the ages that they are. Mm-hmm. One of the most enjoyable things we did with our kids when most of them were younger is we had a thank you book, and we would just pull it out at dinner and go around the table. What are you thankful for? Because a lot of times, I'll say it, this is part of it. We didn't, this is why I answer your question this way, Jenna.
Here's the real answer.
we rarely pray before we eat. I mean, this is like Christian family 101. Yeah, like pray before you eat. But our philosophy at the dinner table is like, there's enough of us. The food is hot. It's like when you get your food, you start eating.
I think I have learned that from your girls, actually. I forget if it was a retreat or something like that. We're just like, hey, you got your food, just start eating.
Yeah.
And I don't remember, but I feel like
so we typically will pray at the end.
Yeah.
And one of the things that came about in that was we would do this book, and it basically was like our names and then the one thing we're thankful for. And if our kids could not speak, usually another kid would be like, oh, Mila's thankful for her mashed potatoes because she's like, stuffing her face with them or whatever. She can't speak yet, and so we'd write that down, and then we'd pray, and we'd just like we'd kind of take turns each meal. Who was going over those prayers. And so they would say, and Daddy thanks you for Mommy, and Mommy thanks you for all the stuff she got done today, and Hallie thanks you for her new friend that she made at school, and Braden thanks you for the Seahawks, and so it's like it's random, and it's funny to go back and look at them, but it's really simple. And if honestly, if there's one thing you can help your kids learn is a heart of gratitude. Yeah. And so anytime there's the ability to opportunity to foster gratitude, we should take it. And so that's one thing that we did when our kids were little, even for the ones who couldn't speak, because the ones who could would just be thankful for them in a sense.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a fun exercise. But going back to the fruit, I've seen a lot like secondhand fruit. It's not like my kids will come home to me or like talk to me and like tell me the ways that that the Spirit has been working in their life. But I remember one time we were doing a worship practice, and Braden was on team, and he was pretty young at the time. We were going around in prayer, like saying some prayers, and it was like an open prayer time, and he prayed. And I did not expect him to pray. I didn't know he was going to. And he prayed, and I was like, I was just like, goodness gracious, like where did that come from? Like, I didn't even know he could pray. Like, we'll pray it like at bedtime, and it's typically, pretty simple stuff and not not very long or whatever, but he was praying, and I was like, man, that I am blessed by this prayer. And that was one thing where it's like you see kind of the fruit of just your investment and their relationship with you, and them hearing you pray or whatever, that you see that, and it's kind of it's not, it's not directly to me. It was like in a different situation. And I've seen that with my twins. Like they're a part of this faith group at Lincoln Park. And I don't know how often that they meet. They might meet once a week or but it's mostly, I think it's mostly Christian kids. But at their school, that it can't be a Christian group. I mean, it's not that. But I love the fact that they're in a school where they can't be in a group that's labeled Christian, but they are blessed with the opportunity by the teachers and the leaders who are over it to have a group where they get to talk about their faith and ways that they can serve the school and the community. I see that as fruit because I don't see them doing Bible studies together in their bedroom at night, which I would be like, well, that would be fruit, right? But it's like, no, they don't do that. But you know what? They're a part of a group at school where they're connecting with others at their school, and that's a unique school.
Yeah.
And so to be with other kids that are connected with Christ is really, it's a real blessing. And to see their desire for it to be something and to grow in it and to grow with those that they meet is really powerful. I think that's fruit that I've seen. And then I won't go through all my kids, but like I've just seen different ways how the things that they care about, that I know it's not me directly saying like you should care about this, but specifically, or just the way that they feel about a fellow student at school, and I went up to them and I was trying to be a friend to them because it seems like everybody else is picking on them. Like that's, to me, that's fruit. Like that's much greater than having a great Sunday school attendance or things like that. Like to have that heart and to be concerned about that. I feel like that I've seen that with my kids, that it's almost, sometimes it's been a surprise. Like, why can't you care about your brother that way? Or like, like, why can't you think, I would have never thought that you had that kind of heart initially, or, but you start to see it more and more. And so I think that there's what they care about. And I remember Braden specifically, he was having conversations with kids at school, and he's done this too at college, where it's like, let me see what my dad thinks. And so he'll text me, and now I'm having conversations with, other high school students, or at college, I didn't even realize I was having a conversation with his professor, who was saying things about, why God doesn't exist and things like that, or because of evil, like God can't be real. And all of a sudden, I'm in these conversations through Braden's phone, and but Braden is like, he's concerned about it and he's thinking about it, and he wants to not really take a stand in his class. Like, I wouldn't put it like that, but just be like, wait, we're not gonna just let this go. Like, we need to talk about this more. What does my pastor father think? And that, to me, that's fruit, because he sees the benefit of being in the conversation with me still, even though he's out of the house. And so I appreciate that.
Jason, a major theme that I'm seeing throughout a lot of what you're talking about is an emphasis on relationship and being in relationship with kids so that you can disciple. Can you talk about how that's been important for your family and how you leverage relationship with them?
Well, I think one thing that you can think about it with a parent is like regret, and like how you missed opportunities to be in a greater relationship with your kids. And I feel like I can experience that a lot because I have enough kids, or I have kids that are not even at home anymore. And, with a busy schedule, it can be hard. And as far as like fostering the relationships themselves, like I've tried different things, whether it's, I typically am the one to put them to bed and pray with them. And, but I'll also, I've written my kids letters. I've written postcards to my kids before.
If I can interject to that real quick.
Oh, yeah.
We went to North Carolina, and your girls got a postcard in the mail at the house that we were staying at. And I can tell you, I saw their face when they got the postcard. And I mean, they were just like over the moon. I mean, it was like to see that impact, made me tear up seeing it just as a father of daughters. And so seeing the impact of that thing in particular, that was so powerful. And it took you a couple minutes to write a postcard, and so seeing them react to it in such a wow, they felt so loved, so seen. It was such a valuable thing.
And
it was beautiful.
It's odd too, because you before you you think about I should write something to my kids. It's I can't. It's I don't have time to do that. I don't have time to do that. Or if I write to one, I need to write to the rest of them. And so there's that, but it's no, if you can just do one, if I can just do one, or if I could just do the 3 that are in North Carolina, then, that to me, that's how I can try and foster a relationship to be I'm trying to, not prove something, but to be there's a part of I'm taking the time out of my time. This isn't even when we're together. I'm not even with you. And so I want you to know that I'm thinking about you now. And that's kind of one of the beautiful things about texting is you can text your kids and text them the simplest things. I'm thinking of you, or how is this class? I know you're not excited about it. You're nervous about going to this thing with people and whatever. And so that's one of the benefits of, for all the bad rap that, kids having phones and things like that. We do try and, at a certain age before they can get a phone. Mila got to cheat a little bit because some of her health issues. So she got a phone earlier than the rest. But just the advantage using technology even to try and connect and relate to the kids is something that at least I try and do.
Well, to kind of wrap us up, what encouragement would you give to families if you could kind of give them one piece of advice or encouragement?
Oh, yeah. Well, I think to take the pressure off, if there is any pressure, some parents might not feel I have no interest in doing the ideal discipleship. Those of us maybe who have been in ministry for a while might feel that pressure a little bit more. It's if we're calling our other families to disciple, I should be out in front. But I would say every family is different. Every kid is different. Every parent is different. And the way that we do it is going to look different. And I think it's about being open and available. No one can argue with your own testimony about, who God is and how God has been in your life. And that testimony does not have to be all flowery. I think when my kids hear, I try not to drag them into all of my issues. I don't think that's healthy. But when my kids hear my frustration with, with the world or with, God, why does God do this? I think that opens the door for them to be more inquisitive and more curious and more willing to call out to God in certain ways. And I think it's I think a lot of it is being yourself, but also modeling Christ as best as you can. And to me, this is encouraging. So how does Jesus disciple his disciples? He tells them stories they don't understand. He serves people. He serves them. And he loves them and is constantly, showing them himself. And that's not a curriculum. That's not a scheduled time thing. It is just him following the Father, doing the will of the Father, and telling them stories. And I think every parent can do that. Every parent can pursue God and tell stories to their kids. And I think one of the scriptures that meant a lot to me growing up was like, if I had a life verse, it's this. It's Luke 2:52 is when Jesus was left behind at the temple by his parents. I assume it was an accident, but they come back, they find him, and there's a conversation. He's been in the temple. He's actually been like conversing with the religious leaders, and Luke says, and he grew in wisdom and in stature and favor with God and man. And so that was always my thought of like, man, if I could grow in wisdom and in stature and favor with God and favor with man, then I'd be on the right track. And I've discovered that is how I try and disciple my kids. And I think everyone can disciple their kids in that way, is to live in such a way that their kids will grow in wisdom, like show them what is good and what is not, and what to pursue. How to grow in stature, like help them eat well, like help them, exercise, things like that. Grow in favor with God, it's pursuing the Lord. Grow in favor with man, live in such a way that you're the servant of all. That doesn't take curriculum, that doesn't take a scheduled time. Everyone can pursue discipleship in that way. And the thing is like, Jesus is there. Jesus is involved in it and present in that. So you're not doing it alone.
Wow.
So
that is. Wow. Well, thank you, Jason.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us for this interview and for all your wisdom. So it's been valuable for me just to listen. I'm just like sitting here as a learner, like when I start taking notes, like I'm going to rewatch this back and stuff. So I appreciate it.
You gonna write your girls a letter?
For sure.
Me
I'm going to
too.
take down, definitely stealing it. Like, yep, I will. So yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah.
And thank you guys for watching. And we are just so excited about this new format. It's been encouraging for us and exciting for us, and I hope it has been for you as well. And so thanks for joining us for this interview, and we'll see you next time. And if you missed anything, if you want to go back and catch our previous interviews or episodes, you can go to family@pathway.com and find them there. But until next time, we'll see you later, and good luck discipling. And remember, you don't have to be perfect, and that's okay. It's just continuing to point your kids to Jesus, continuing to follow him yourself. So we're just thankful to be on the journey with you. Thanks.